Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and the Steam Grand Prix Summer Sale is going on right now. It is occurring between June 25th and July 9th, and we're going to be looking at the general gameplay mechanics and what is actually going on in the sale in a second. But first I want to say that as a small-time YouTuber who is currently making nothing whatsoever off ads on YouTube, the best way you can support my channel and support me so I continue to make the content that I usually make, which are full playthroughs of games beginning to end with criticism throughout, is to help me have more games and more of a library to select and choose from. And even though I do have quite a few games on my Steam account, more is always better. So down below in the description there is a point where you can friend me on Steam, then you can gift games when you friend people on Steam. While the summer sale is going on, that means if you did this you would get the games at a discount, first of all, and you would, I think, be eligible for some of the rewards for purchasing games. Also, if you wanted to support me more on a monthly basis, there's also a link down to Patreon. There's a bunch of other links in the description to social media sites also, but I don't want to shill too much. You could also subscribe and click the notification bell. Yes, blah blah blah. So the summer sale traditionally has been the biggest sale for Steam. This is in the past couple years been not as good of deals as you at one time would have wanted. You're going to see that there are a lot of games while I'm logged into my account that are on my wish list. My wish list is highly curated, so it's games I absolutely know I'd like to own and cover on YouTube, or at least own. There might be a few games that fall outside of YouTube's family-friendly guidelines. Your front page will be different than mine, and in general, I tend to cover kind of a different variety of games than a lot of people. So your front page here is just a little bit of a different experience from what you normally would see, and once you hit this point it will start just loading random things that the Steam recommendation engine version 2.0 is recommending specifically to my account. But if you click here, we'll get the important stuff. So they're calling it the Steam Grand Prix because there's something around the idea of a race. Apparently there's a pig, a hare, a cockatiel, a tortoise, and a corgi, and it seems like the corgi is winning right now, so you might have to join a team. Let's see. Welcome to the summer event. You're training. You've been training for Steam 2019 Grand Prix. They've told us nothing about this up until this point. In fact, Valve is terrible as far as advertising, and it's a weird, flat corporate structure that I don't want to get into too much. But clearly, if it was a better run company, they would have an advertisement department that would have kind of hype this up a little bit, at least on Steam itself. You team up with your friends and complete quests, earn personal rewards, and race to finish each day at the summer sale. Be sure to update your wish list before you put your pedal to the metal, as the very best drivers could be awarded for their most wished for games throughout the event, which would be nice, certainly, but I doubt that'll actually happen to me or many people. So the first step is to increase your boost meter's capacity. Shop the summer sale. $1 equals 100 point capacity. Before, $1 would equal, on previous summer sales, some amount towards getting trading cards and making badges. I assume we still are going to get trading cards and making badges, although maybe not. In fact, there might be no reason to even complete badges in this summer sale. If that was true, then that would almost feel like the abandonment of trading cards and badges, which would be fine by me. It was always kind of a silly system, but it was a decent system as a YouTuber to increase the number of friends you can have, which is kind of artificially limited. But I have plenty of open friend slots. Step 2 is to fill your boost meter with points and nitro, complete quests and claim achievements. I guess we'll see some quests down below on this page. Step 3 is boost your team for distance and speed. Hit boost and claim rewards at the pit stop, and there's a link to that. And then 4 is win the race. Random members of the top 3 teams win free games. This concept sounds really good. It's the one thing Steam should have been doing with every summer sale and every sale they did, is just giving away free games. And who's to say if these games are going to be AAA games that are selling for $60 or even maybe $100 now? Let's face it, if you want to get the complete version of a game these days, you're really buying a deluxe edition for $100, close, not $60. Or if these free games that are going to be given away are things that are 99 cents or even 59 cents games. So when it gets into its more detailed, you increase the boost meter's capacity by... Boost meter capacity enables you to earn points in races. All players will begin with a boost meter capacity of at least 100 points, and for each day you participate, you also upgrade your boost meter capacity for 100 points. So it seems to me, if you're doing this, for every $1 you spend on Steam, you'll upgrade your capacity for the boost meter by 100 points. So it seems from that, this first step, you should buy all the games you want to buy on the Steam Summer Sale the first day. Because I doubt there will be any quests that require you to purchase any more games after that point. And frankly, that has always been the case with Steam Summer Sales, at least until they got rid of the day. At least now. They used to have daily deals that would lower games even cheaper than what their sale price was already at. I guess people had a bit of a negative reaction to that, or they just thought it was too much work or something. The daily deals often were very good deals, but then you would have to log in every day, and they seem like they don't really feel like the need to do that. Instead, they want you to log in every day to do quests to potentially win free games. The second paragraph here, earn points in Nitro when you complete quests. Once you've fueled the boost meter, you'll be ready to drive by completing Grand Prix quests in your Steam games. Each point will earn you advance your team, go the distance. The more points you earn, the more Nitro you build up toward your next boost. Now, it seems, this almost feels like this would have a mini game around it, but I'm not really seeing a mini game, so I don't know what the quests are going to be. Next paragraph is using boosting. The Nitro you gained will increase your team's speed in the race. Coordinated timed boosts with your teammates together, you'll increase the team boost level. 100 active Nitro will result in a 0.1 times boost to your team's speed. And I guess you're gonna have to choose a team, and clearly the corgi, the dog, has one, and that makes a lot of sense. People would on the internet pick a dog well above a pig, a hare, a cockatiel, or a tortoise. There's kind of no reason whatsoever and you can kind of see the difference there. So everybody should just be on one team for the most part. Let's see. Basic, earn and coordinate team attacks. Basic attacks are dropped off upon boosting, with a 1 in 4 chance of receiving 1 per for full boost. Coordinate timed attacks with other drivers together, and you'll decrease your target team's boost level. 100 stolen Nitro will result in a 0.1 decrease in the team's speed. Now, there is, I guess, some math you could run into this. If you are in this team, and everybody's in this team, your odds probably go down of winning free games. But was it, let's see, random members of the top 3 teams will win free games. So if one of these other sides, which I guess the hare would probably be the second pick, since this is a tortoise versus the hare analogy, that would be kind of my guess. Otherwise, you might want to go with the cockatiel because that's slightly higher. Your odds of winning a free game might be better going with the cockatiel, but I imagine just sticking with the corgi is a smart move too. I might go with the cockatiel. This paragraph over here: claim personal rewards at the pit stop. You'll earn Grand Prix tokens for points to contribute to your team. Redeem the tokens for chat emoticons, profile badges, and more in the Grand Prix stop. Win team rewards when you place in each race each day. Throughout the Grand Prix, a random members of the top first, second, and third team will receive top items from their Steam wish list. The top item from their Steam wish list. Interesting. So I should put, I guess, the most expensive game possible on my wish list at the top in the ranked order, which, okay, that's a really good offer in the long run, because there are definitely some games, a lot of Japanese companies don't ever go on sale. A lot of EA, Ubisoft games sometimes never go on sale, so it does make some sense that if there was something that is $100 and it came out 4 years ago and it's just never been discounted at all, that would be a really great way to get a discount on that. And I almost always shop by discount. Like, I won't pay full price for pretty much any game. It says day one, greater than, or maybe just arrow, foggy forest standings. Cooperate or compete with friends in the race to finish. Who's ahead, who's behind? It's a neck and neck in today's race behind your friends. For bigger picture overview, check out the Grand Prix multi-day standings. So what are these quests? Plays these games you own. For me, that would be play Counter-Strike Go Global Offensive. I'm not going to do that, frankly. I just don't have time to play CSGO. In fact, I've never even played CSGO, so I really don't want to do that. Let's see. And then if I click on plus free games, there's World of Warships that I really don't want to do either. And these are integrated actions. Ooh, I don't know if I have time to do any of this. This is a huge waste of time. Play Stardew Valley. I didn't like Stardew Valley. I covered it on my channel. It's just not a game for me, so I wouldn't want to play that. Seriously, interesting. This is the first time, I think, in a summer sale where I'm not going to really contribute in any of that. Like, I really don't think I am, because each of these are probably pretty easy to do if I wanted to play these games. But as a YouTuber, I have a list of games I'm playing and that I focus on, and I really don't have time to jump into random games. Same is true for 2 Point Hospital. The odds of them playing the one game that I was going to play today, which is Zombies, the OMBI, for recordings for Halloween, because I record a lot of my footage pretty early, and that's the plan. Yeah, the odds of that being a game to play is incredibly low. I imagine these games up here are games I own, and these games down here are games I don't own. So I assume everybody would probably get a random selection of these games. Yeah, I definitely don't own Mordhau. So you kind of have to buy these games to play them. Play any game with Steam achievements. Here, I do have a bunch of points on Doom because this is the game I literally just finished playing. And frankly, I won't get into it too deep, but I felt like it was an overhyped game. And after finishing this and seeing a speedrun of Final Doom versus a speedrun of Quake, Doom 2016 as a reboot feels a lot more like Quake than Doom. So, alright, here's the Grand Prix standings in total, and it looks like all of these numbers are at 0 for the first day. Well, this is an interesting twist, and it doesn't seem like there's any badge at all. Seems like they're abandoning badges, which is not a bad idea, or at least de-emphasizing that. The badges as a mechanic really was just a loot box mechanic, and Steam and Valve had not been caught up in that yet, but they were definitely going to get caught up in that pretty quickly. Alright, so there is a badge here you can get. If you have 100 tokens, you can redeem the Grand Prix badge. If you have 1,500 tokens, you can have a $5 discount on your next store purchase. These have happened before, but they always aren't really worth it. Let's see. $1 equals 100 tokens, I think. I think that's how that worked. So if you were going to directly connect this, it's $150 for a $5 discount. So if you were going to spend over $150, I guess, buy one purchase of $150, get this discount. You can get these tokens otherwise, but that's kind of ridiculous. Now, I do like the fact that these backgrounds and such are going to be something that you don't get at random, because in previous Steam sales, you've gotten tons of duplicates of backgrounds and chat emoticons, and they're decent to break down in gems and maybe make a bag of gems and then sell on the Steam marketplace, but that's a lot of like almost like stock trading type mathematics you have to do, and it's not really anything a normal person should waste their time on. So if you can just avoid purchasing those, that's great. So the only thing I guess to ask is no, you can't save the tokens for the next event, which is standard. Let's see. Nothing here is tradable at all. So even if you were to purchase these emoticons, you better want them. Yeah, it seems like they might be getting rid of the idea of the marketplace in general, and trading cards in general, or limiting the Steam marketplace, which there has been criticism. So for a normal person, if you're not obsessed with anything, you probably could redeem the Grand Prix badge, and maybe you can redeem it multiple times. So maybe after you have 100 tokens, it takes 200 to get the second tier, maybe 400 to get the third tier, maybe 800 to get the third tier, or maybe it's just 100 to get one tier up over and over again. Otherwise, the only thing you would want is 1,500 tokens to get a purchase. but then that puts you in a weird position where you're saving and waiting till the very last day to spend money, when the game really wants you to spend money on day one. So let's see. I guess I'm gonna choose Cockatiel, and we should look at our wish list first though. So here's the wish list thing, and I have some plugins, so on this Chrome browser I can empty the wish list. The majority of the rest of this video is going to be me going through my wish list in ranked order, not by discount. So what do I have right now at the top? The non-RE Zero Escape games. What would I want at the top? Nier Automata? Yeah, Nier Automata I think could easily be one that... Can I just drag this up? How does this work? I'm in the ranked order, and the page does not want me to be filtering, I think. Maybe that's the problem. Filters. We're not filtering anything. All types. Okay, it had to be all types. So yeah, there's some DLC that for Fallout 4 someone was kind enough to give me Fallout 4, and then I wanted to get the DLC before I bought I started playing it. As for filters now, Nier Automata is a great pick. Frankly, it's $39.99. It may not be, and almost certainly is not the price, the highest price thing. The highest price thing is probably, well, I guess I would have to scroll all the way down to the bottom here. Halo Master Chief Collection. These are all free games, or games that don't have a price, or games that you can't get anymore. The Steam Link, for instance. Oddly, there's rumors of a new NVIDIA Shield version. Is a game that was so bad they took it off of sale. Some of these games also are off sale because of that. So, like, Atelier Lulu, The Sign of Our Land is a Japanese RPG game. I'm not sure which RPG games I want to cover, because there's quite a lot of them. Octopath Traveler, again, a slightly different in art style JRPG game. These are $59.99, so I don't really even have games that are super expensive. Dragon Quest is a good choice though. Like, if I were to get Dragon Quest 11 Echoes of an Elusive Age for $59, if that was gifted, that would be great, because Dragon Quest is amazingly popular. It's bigger than Pokemon in Japan, and as a Japanese company makes it, they will probably never discount it. So that would be an interesting choice. I imagine if I put the Steam controller as the #1 pick, I probably wouldn't get that gifted to me. They probably would just skip over to the next most expensive games. And then you have cases of games like Bulletstorm 4 Clip Edition. I already own Bulletstorm, so I really don't want to spend $39 to get the upgraded version of that. I should have been gifted a upgrade for free, or at least at something along the lines of $5 to upgrade to the full version. But they chose to force people who had supported the game to, in the past, to pay the full price in the future for the remaster, which it isn't much of a remaster. Bloodstained Ritual of Night just came out. I'd love to play that, certainly. but it's only like $35. Of course, if your goal really is only to pay or spend about $100, which I think that's pretty much where I'm trying to go in this sale. If you start buying a bunch of $35 games. Shanti Half Journey Hero Ultimate Edition is another game I'd love to cover, the Shanti series, and this, I believe, is the remaster of the first Shanti game and where to start. So I have other of the Shanti games. If you're not familiar with Shanti, it's kind of a Super Mario Brothers platformer game with its own little style. Danganronpa. A lot of the games I have are Japanese, lesser known series. SNK Heroines Tag Team Frenzy, a kind of low level for newbies fighting games with a bunch of anime girls. Not probably worth even $25, but something I would like to cover. Let's see. As I'm scrolling through here, there's lesser and lesser known things. I've covered the Shadow of the Tomb Raider games up until this point as far as the reboot series, so it would make sense to cover Shadow of the Tomb Raider. I am slowly working my way through the Assassin's Creed series, but I don't believe I have Assassin's Creed 3 remastered, so I don't think I really want to pay to purchase that a second time since I do have the original game. Galgun as a series would be something I'd like to cover, but it might take me a little bit of effort to do some YouTube family-friendly censoring to play that game, although maybe not that much. Darksiders 3 is mixed reviewed at $20.39. It might be worth it then. They patched it, but people were definitely unhappy with the play style and the amount of effort put into it when it was originally released. But they patched it and added a different playstyle, but that really hasn't fixed a lot of problems or fixed a lot of its early bad reviews. It's really an example of them, THQ Nordic, just not taking their time, not putting enough care into the release of their products, and that is my fear as THQ Nordic continuously acquires more companies and releases more games and announces more games, is that it doesn't seem like they are focusing in on their tentpole products to make sure they have games that are guaranteed to always sell and bring in the audience. I'm thinking about covering fighting games, but I have yet to figure out which of the fighting games to play. Things like Street Fighter 4 here is mixed reviewed, so I probably don't need to play that, and there's probably some shenanigans going on with this $20 price tag, where you have to buy DLC or season passes, which is ridiculous for a fighting game. Let's see. A lot of these games have been on this wish list for about a year, so some of these I may have forgotten about. The Sexy Brutale and Wandersong, two niche games that would be nice if they're on sale, but you can see, well, actually there's a long list here of games that have just opted to not be on sale at all, and you'll often see that. Like, I want to play the Mummy Demastered, I want to play these three games, I don't want to pay full price for them, and some of these games will go on sale randomly throughout the year, but because there's always this extra thing you get when there's a summer sale, it doesn't make the best amount of sense to buy games during that time. The Missing JJ Macfield and Island of Memories is probably at the right price at $19.79 as a weird horror indie game that not too many people have heard of. At least the majority of gamers probably haven't heard of it. It's a little surprising that they aren't putting it more of a push for the, what is it, Dota Undergrounds or Dota Underlords beta that they just released, which is the Dota auto chess version of the game made by Valve directly, you would think that that would be a major focus as something that they'd throw out there as join the beta, play this. I'd love to cover all the Sunan Kagura games, but they're anime girls, anime ninja girls, and in different states of undress in different styles of games. So that would be another series that would probably require some extra blurring or filtering. But I do have this new feature I found where I can blur things, but I probably couldn't do it fast enough in real time for YouTube's interest. I'd love to play Return of Obra Dinn at $17.99. That seems to be the right price. A lot of these other games. The Zero Escape series is a kind of like Saw murder mystery series that has been traditionally very expensive. So that's another game. Then it's nice to see them even a little bit on discount. And certainly as I go through my wish list, I'm seeing more and more Japanese weirdo games have stayed on the wish list as I've bought all the other games. Cuphead at $16.99, a very good purchase. In the past, I've gone through sales and just sorted by the price tag and chosen what I was going to add to cart and purchase by, is it a $5 game, is it a $10 game? I'm seeing some major AAA games that, yes, are now a couple years old, but are now at a reasonable price. Dead Cells for $16.74. Another game that I'd like to play. Particularly in Dead Cells' case, Dead Cells felt like it was in early access for quite a while, so it made a lot more sense to wait on that game. Lego games. I like to get Lego games at $10, but $15.99 for the ones that came out just last year is not terrible. You definitely wouldn't want to play full price. You do kind of have to be careful though with Lego games that are more recent because they have DLC elements too, so you might be paying $16 and then a season pass if you want to get all the characters and all the minifig characters, which is kind of what you would want, particularly if you have a kid on playing these games. Also, I really wouldn't recommend buying PC versions of the Lego games because they don't run well on my computer. That might be my video card's fault, but in general, I think there is a high enough chance that the game will be very, very poorly performing on PC. Whereas if you got the Lego games at a used video game shop, you'd get it very cheap for the Xbox One or the PlayStation 4. And that would be a much better experience. Or even for the Nintendo Switch, which I guess would be the best choice. Lego Movie 2 video game, same thing. Hat in Time, I've wanted to play this since it came out. $14.99 makes some more sense. Giga Wrecker is a game that I want to check out. $14.99 may still be a little too expensive. A lot of these are smaller games that I haven't seen anybody ever cover, and that's where I'm trying to tilt some of my coverage to, instead of trying to play Fortnite or things like that. Although YouTube changes all the time, so it doesn't really make a lot of sense to try to figure out what's going to be successful on YouTube, because basically nothing will be as far as gaming. Resident Evil 7, yeah, with the season pass, that would be frankly an expensive $30 purchase. Maybe there's a bundle that's better that way. But yeah, I'd like to play that. I'd like to play Prey for $15.99, although again, season passes. Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. I don't believe it has a season pass, so $14.99 would just be that. Dragon Ball Fighter Z for $14.99. I don't think there was a season pass on that. Dishonored. Certainly some of these $15 games, when compared to other $15 games, maybe not worth it. I think you'd probably want to play Hellblade before you wanted to play Dishonored: Death of the Outsider, which is the spin-off game. It's kind of like a DLC where you don't have to buy the original game. I guess I want Shadow Complex Remastered, but knowing that it's kind of owned by Epic and the whole Epic Game Store debacle is going on, it's probably not going to get discounted, and it's not something that I really need to cover because I've already covered it. I got it for free when the Epic Store, the Epic Game Launcher first launched, before they tried to turn it into a store like they did, like it is now. Which is funny. Also, the company that developed this chair offered me a code for the game after I had already covered the game, which made very little sense to me, and I didn't even see the message until months later through Twitter. I'm like, oh, well, I didn't respond to that, and I wouldn't have responded to that, frankly, because the last thing I want to do is have to put hashtag sponsored or hashtag ad on a video of mine. I'd rather very much get games from people who support my channel and want me to actually cover these games, or think I'll have fun playing these games, than getting games from people who want me to advertise it for them. House Flipper for $13.99. Probably a decent price at that point. I hear the lawn care DLC isn't as good. I saw a review that said that much. Dying Light for $13.59 makes a lot of sense to buy that. Maybe there's some DLC around this. I think there is, but the Dying Light 2 is going to be coming out pretty soon. Catherine Classic for $13.39. It's probably a good price. Opus Magnum, a programming alchemy game for $13.39. A lot of games here seem to be hitting the same price points, so clearly there's some communication or collusion going on as far as what the price points are. You don't see things that are $12.99, then $12.98, then $12.97, which you would see that in a list this long. Some of these games are questionable. This is an early access game that came out in June 1st, 2018. It probably shouldn't even be on the wish list, and I would have filtered out early access games anyways. Killer 7, a classic game that was ported to PC. I want to cover that at some point. People seem to love it, but $12.99 for an old game is a little hard to stomach. Not out of the realm of reason. Slay the Spire for $12.49. God Eater 2 for $12.49. Some anime-esque games are fully inspired by anime games like Sword Art Online. Tales of Berseria is another JRPG. This company, Echo, I probably should buy this game because this company went out of business, and so it probably is only a matter of time before the company sells itself off in bankruptcy to some license holder, and this gets removed from Steam and maybe not restored to Steam for a long time or ever, or it gets restored at a much higher price. So 50% off, $12.49 for Echo. Isn't really the greatest price ever, but they've kind of got you under a barrel. Although, if you don't know what Echo is and you don't really care, then you probably shouldn't go out of your way to buy the game either. And what's really weird is they licensed or optioned this game to be a movie, and so there may be a movie that comes out about this game after the company that made the game is completely out of business. Lorelei would be the third in the Cat Lady Horror Adventure Games series at $11.99 since it came out April 26th. It's probably the best deal you're going to get. If I was to purchase this, it would give me a good excuse, or if I was to be gifted this, it would be give me a good excuse to cover it earlier for Halloween, October of this year. Otherwise, I probably would just wait until next year and cover it then. Let's see, is this Battle Princess Madeline out of early access? Apparently it is. Interesting. So now we're down to $11.99 games. The console for $11.99, if that's the entirety of the first season or the entire game, might be worth it. It was a little expensive when it first came out for what it was. Star Trek Bridge Crew is interesting, but you kind of have to have friends to play with you. I don't ever have any friends that could meet up with my schedule. I was going to go through all the Nancy Drew games, so there's quite a few of these that I'd consider purchasing, although at $11.99 for what are somewhat simplistic adventure games. This one from 2012 is pretty expensive, but they have the Nancy Drew name on them, so I don't think the price on that is ever going to really go down too much. Some games just never go down in price. The remaster of Black Mirror, which wasn't good. In fact, the original Black Mirrors weren't that good either. This is $11.99. I think I could probably wait until that got to $5 before I'd be willing to actually pay for it. I don't play a lot of sports games, so Super Mega Baseball 2 must have something slightly interesting in its art style. Although, I'm not sure I need to really play any sports games either. Because none of them tend to be that interesting or that good. It's questionable whether anybody should buy Metal Gear Solid. This would be supporting Konami. There's no discount here. There's never going to be another Metal Gear game of any quality made by Konami, almost guaranteed. And the previous Metal Gear games aren't going to come to PC, aren't likely to come to PC either, so it's kind of silly to buy this now. It's probably silly to even have bought it on PC when it came out in 2015. Here's another Assassin's Creed game, Syndicate, for $11.99. This is probably a good deal. This is, I think, maybe the next game in the series that I don't own. Watch Dogs 2 for $11.99. Well, Watch Dogs 3 or Watch Dogs Legion is, I think, what its actual subtitle is, has been announced. I could see maybe a reason to play Watch Dogs 2, but frankly, you could probably skip it. You might very possibly, once Watch Dogs 3 comes out, realize that you could skip that one too. At some point, I think the games will, the Watch Dogs series will find a decent pattern of gameplay in it, but I don't think it's going to be great. Same is true for Assassin's Creed, is that a lot of the Assassin's Creed games are very skippable. Here's another Shanti game, Shanti and the Pirate's Curse, which I think might be one of the newest one, if not the newest ones, discounted at $11.99. I don't think these Way Forward, that's the company that makes them, games go on sale very often. Here's a video game based on a anime, but that anime is from a few years ago, so I don't know how much relevancy it has. Psycho-Pass Mandatory Happiness. Same can be said for Doctor Who Infinity, which came out a few years ago, so it's not going to be a modern Doctor Who. In fact, the Doctor they're talking about is the Scottish guy. So that's basically 2 Doctors ago as far as actors playing them, because they skipped from the Scottish guy to the female actress and she only wanted to do one season, so maybe she has the Christmas special to do this year, and then it's gonna move on to another character, and I'll leave it at that and not criticize the entirety of the last season or latest season of Doctor Who. Akiba's Trip Undead and Undressed is discounted for $11.99. Psychic vampires that you steal their energy by stealing their clothes. A weird anime game. There's the original version. This is kind of a sequel that came out to the world, and then there was an original kind of, I think it was a Vita game or a Nintendo DS game, is getting remastered and re-released. So storyline wise, it might make sense to play the newer game than the older game, but I imagine it won't really hurt. I was gifted The Witcher 3 free with the purchase of my current video card, but it was a Good Old Games version, not a Steam version. I'd like to get all of my games on my Steam storefront so I remember I own them. And I never got the DLC for The Witcher 3, so I'd like to cover that. That being said, that would be kind of an extra expense to spend even $11.99 to buy the game. That's really something where I'm asking people to gift me the game, and that way I don't have to go into that expense ourselves. Let's see, moving on. I don't think we need to mention Negligee. Like, the first uncensored game on Steam will make more sense to cover that game once we get a few years past when that happened, and we can determine whether Steam is, for the most part, sticking to its policy of allowing uncensored games, or if it is kind of backsliding on that policy. It's been up and down and odd. Baba's You, another programming game that's been super popular. It's pretty recent a game, and at $10.49, that's probably the best deal you're going to get for the next 6 months. So I can see getting that. There's a lot of visual novels in here that I don't know how many of these visual novels I'd actually play, because as a YouTuber, if I was playing a visual novel game, I'd have to read all the text. That would ruin my voice, and a lot of visual novels often tend to have some form of nudity or sexual content of something in them, which then just becomes a bit of a hassle to have to edit out. Although, in the case of visual novels, it might simply be a single image or half a dozen single images, which is not super difficult to censor out compared to 3D models where a character might just be in scantily clad or no clothing throughout the entirety of the game. But I do want to support the industry of the visual novel because they are by far the most popular game on Steam, even though most people in the West wouldn't know that. And there are quite a few of them that are really good. But then there are quite a few of them that are really bad too. Guacamelee 2, I'd like to own that. 50% off for $9.99, considering it came out August 21st in 2018. That seems like a decent price. So this is where it seems like it's a pretty easy decision, depending on whether you want to look at the percent discounted or the actual base price. You should be looking at the base price, not the percent discounted. Percent discounted really is a trick, and while it is illegal, it has not been unheard of people setting the base price of their games higher than what it was, and then lowering the price to the same price it was originally, or even maybe a little bit higher, but then making it look like it's been discounted quite a bit more. But that is illegal and something you can't do in the United States. But I don't think anybody gets caught for doing it either. So yeah, it happens. I'm not sure if I really want to play the Yakuza series. Yakuza 0 might be the first game in that series, so at $9.99 that might be the one to play and try. There's not a lot of kids games, so the Netflix series Little Witch Academia Chamber of Time for $10 might be something worth playing. Seems like they've fixed some problems on it. It was not highly received originally. A lot of games that are racing games are about the closest thing to a good game that little kids can play. It really still is, PC gaming really is for adults, and for the most part people that are over 18, not even a teenager, really has the greatest experience on PC selections. And I'd like to see that fixed. I'm not sure there'd be a reason to play Quantum Break these days. The company that made Quantum Break is now making a game called Control, and it feels like Control potentially might fix all of the many problems Quantum Break had, but we'll have to wait till that game actually is out to know if that's true. Yeah. For young kids, I would still very much recommend getting a Nintendo Switch. For older kids, it's probably an Xbox game, unless your kid is specifically into PlayStation exclusives, and if they are in the PlayStation exclusives, then they're going to be mostly the Japanese games and anime-esque games. But even at that point, on that topic, there's less and less favor happening between PlayStation and Japanese developers and publishers, and we're seeing a lot more Japanese developers come to PC on top of switching to Nintendo or switching to even Microsoft, which makes very little sense in Japan because nobody has a Microsoft Xbox in Japan. No Xbox Ones basically at all. Some people do, but it's in the numbers of hundreds, not thousands. But a lot of that has to do with PlayStation, Sony Interactive Entertainment moving their offices from Japan to California and having a completely different team with a completely different mentality run the show and censor the games and license the games. Kerbal Space Program at $9.99. It's probably worth it at that price. Sure, but there's also DLC on that, and I don't feel like Kerbal Space Program is really worth owning these days. I made some videos on Kerbal Space Program, so I already own it on a different account. I'm just trying to get it all on one account. And I don't think I'd ever make any more videos on them because they were some of the worst videos I ever made. Slime Rancher for $9.99. Totally would love that. Prototype for $9.99. This is a game that is a niche enough game that it's never going to go down. I've seen it on sale, I think, for $10 for several years. It came out in 2012. I don't think you're going to ever get it any cheaper than that, so probably should just, if you want to own the game, spend the money now and get it. See, here's a Lego game for $10, but again, maybe some DLC would be added to that to bump the price back up. Tabletop Simulator for $9.99 I think is probably worth getting. I've looked at a lot of tabletop board games, card games, and frankly, every time I see a game like that, I think to myself, and I often get recommended just buying Tabletop Simulator instead because it's such a better deal. Rocket League is an interesting consideration because it's going to be removed, or at least it's feared that it's going to be removed from Steam because the company was bought out by Epic. So if you want Rocket League, maybe now is your last chance and the best chance to get it. Fallout 3 Game of the Year Edition for $10 is a pretty decent price. We already talked about the Zero Escape games. Some of these games, like the Bear With Me Collector's Edition, are getting ported to Switch, although at this point it's become such a free-for-all on Switch that's no testament to quality or popularity. So I've seen some pretty bad games that nobody's heard of been ported to Switch, and then they get ported to Switch, and it's not like they get any more advertisement or coverage, so they're still pretty irrelevant games. Let's see, we're down to the $10 section, and I wouldn't be surprised if you look here. Between here and here are the vast majority of games. So $10 is the beginning of the sweet spot for games that they're selling at. Here's a game that's brand new and it's being sold for $8.99. This came out just, I believe, yesterday. Senran Kagura Reflections, which is a massaging / groping mini game with the anime ninja girls. The thing about the Senran Kagura series in particular is if you fall in love with those characters, there are about 30 different versions of games involving those same 3D models. Whereas a lot of the other anime games, you'll see that character just for that game, and that's it. What Remains of Edith Finch for $8.99. That's a pretty good deal. 7 Billion Humans is a programming game. As I was trained in programming, I like to play programming games. And I covered the game before this, which was Human Resources Machine. Fury is a fighting game. Bullet Hell, fast-paced action game. Hack and slash game. $8.99. This is probably the best you're going to get for that. Unity for $8.99. Assassin's Creed Unity. Fable Anniversary came out in 2014. $8.74. This is a big enough name that it probably wouldn't get discounted too much more. I think when you put a game on Steam, you can set a maximum percentage and probably a minimum price to sell your game at. And when these Steam sales happen, their games just get sold at those prices without perhaps coordinating things with the companies. Because I have definitely seen some games that year after year after year only hit 75%, only hit 50% off, and they just won't ever get any cheaper. Whereas theoretically, if one is to believe in supply and demand, in capitalism and game and products losing their value over time, then older games should be getting cheaper and cheaper, and that just doesn't really happen for a lot of games, which isn't really surprising, and really is more of just an example of capitalism in theory and capitalism in reality are different. More Disgaea games are Japanese RPG games. There's a whole series of them. More Danganronpa games, which are murder, mystery, adventures, psychological horrors. It's hard to describe them. We really don't have time to go over every single game and describe it. So really, I'm just trying to wet people's whistle as far as here's some interesting games you might be interested in, and here are games that I'm interested in. Now, it is fair and proper to say I have over now 1,100 games on my Steam account already, and I certainly haven't covered 1,100 games on my channel, but I have covered a lot of games, probably about 100. That being said, a lot of the games I do own are not games I'd ever cover. They're older games, things that don't run that well on PC, things that I wanted to purchase and own, but not things that are really relevant to make note of or criticize. Here we have Halo Wars Definitive Edition for $7.99. That's kind of a great example of a game that I'd have to struggle through playing other real-time strategy games to then maybe spotlight this and compare it to other things. So I'd probably play some of the Command and Conquer games I already own, and then at some point spotlight Halo Wars and just do a 30-minute video on it, and then get back to playing another Command and Conquer game. But yeah, I have a lot of games, certainly. The selection is not the greatest. There are games on the wish list like the Final Fantasy series. I don't know how many, if any, of the Final Fantasy games I really need to cover. You can see a lot of these are discounted for $7.99. Square Enix, by this time next year, or more likely in a couple of years, may be out of business. So the Final Fantasy series, if you want all the Final Fantasy games, you might want to start purchasing them now. I believe that because there's been several high-profile people that have left the company. That being said, Activision Blizzard is probably going to go out of business way before Square Enix does, and I'm still playing Hearthstone every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday as I'm talking about video game news and looking at new games that come out on Steam. And that's how this wishlist got this big in the first place, is because I'm looking at every new game, and if it's a game that looks like it might be good, I'll put it on my follow list, which is a separate list, and then after about 6 months I'll look at the follow list and see if the game got enough reviews to be very positive and consider it a second time, and if it's very positive it makes it to the wish list. These old games, Princess Maker Refund is a remaster of an old game. It's a daughter raising simulator, for lack of a better explanation, and it is somewhat historically known when it originally came out for PC. That's a very niche product that I'd like to cover, but also a product that's kind of expensive, so it's hard to justify playing something like that or showing off something like that when there are bigger, longer, more well-known games out there. Particularly in video games, there is this case in which games that are relevant never really stop being relevant. There's always enough nostalgia, enough of a reason to go back and play it. Chrono Trigger is kind of an example of that. Like, you would think that Chrono Trigger would have been super popular when it came out, but then there would have been really no reason to play Chrono Trigger after so many 3D JRPG also came out. But that's not the case. You get remasters and you get re-releases, and if people still want to play the old games. So, whereas that doesn't really happen too much with books. Books is a great comparison. Like, somebody writes a book series, and unless it's a top of tier series like Harry Potter that constantly gets reprints and constantly gets re-releases, it gets kind of forgotten. I can't really even name a great example. 50 Shades of Grey might be the best example of that, but even that was popular enough that it's getting re-releases and around it. But certainly every month there are hundreds, if not thousands, of books that get released and nobody reads them, and they get small 1,000 print runs. Here's a series I want to cover, the Umihara Kawase series. It's a anime character with a fishing hook that propels herself, kind of like Getting Over It with Benet Foddy, but this came first, and there's like 3 games around that. It's kind of a weirdo game, but it's something interesting. Actually, I don't think I want this on my wish list. 60 parsecs. I'd play if somebody wanted to gift it to me, but I played 60 seconds, which is the spiritual predecessor to this game, and it wasn't that good. Let's see, this is rated very positively, but I was very underimpressed by 60 seconds, and the price was pretty high on 60 seconds, so I probably should remove that from the wish list, or just remind myself not to ever purchase it, but I probably should just remove it. I expect in maybe 6 months to a year's time I might need to do a wish list cleanup, but as I'm going through the wish list right now, there's really not a lot of games I'm noticing that are so bad that I would want to remove them. My standards have been raised quite a bit in the past year or so, but most of the great games that are on the wish list are still great games. Let's see, Cube 2 Season Pass. I don't know if I really need that. I covered Cube 2 and I don't recall there being anything worth purchasing as far as a Season Pass. Yeah, that's interesting. I'd have to think about that. I didn't hate Cube 2 by any means, but I didn't fall in love with it so much that I felt like I needed more gameplay. There's some full motion video games like The Bunker and The Late Shift. I would like to cover them, and at $6.50 that makes sense. Cat Quest, a RPG where you play as a cat. That was somewhat popular. Part of the problem as a YouTuber certainly comes down to some of these games were super popular day one, but you kind of have to play them day one if you're going to get any real views on YouTube or Twitch. So if you're waiting for a sale, if you're trying to save any money whatsoever, you can't do that. And certainly as a small-time YouTuber who is struggling to try to get 1,000 subscribers and probably will never get to that point, just so that they could get back into the YouTube partner program once they kicked out all the small-time YouTuber channels. And frankly, that's even questionable at this point. I wouldn't be surprised if most, including myself, of the people who were kicked out of the YouTube partner program would not be allowed back in if they are gaming channels, because YouTube seems to have particularly a dislike for gaming channels. So I wouldn't be surprised one bit if there's no way to get back in, or if by the time I did get 1,000 subscribers they would just move the goalpost again and say you need 2,000 subscribers and twice the amount of watch time. Agony Unrated would be an example of a game that I'd have to censor quite a bit, and frankly if I was to cover it, maybe YouTube wouldn't like that in general. So yeah, mostly I'm trying to get people to support me through Patreon or through gifting games, which makes a lot more sense. Night Trap for $5.09 makes a lot of sense. Double Switch, I love this game, Double Switch. I think it was a improvement on kind of the concept of Night Trap. Both of these games at $5.09 makes a lot of sense to me. Homesick for $5.09 makes a lot less sense, but it hasn't been discounted very much in the 4 years that it's been out, and it is a game I'd still like to cover. Let's see, what else have we got here that are worth mentioning? All of these games are good, certainly, or in some cases some of these games are really bad and maybe noteworthy. If I was going to cover all of the Alone in the Dark games, this might make some sense. That being said, it probably doesn't make any sense to play something that is 23% positive, even if you're paying only $5 for it. There's better things by far you could spend your $5 on. Then you have things that are like tie-ins to comic books and movies that are mixed, but they might have some relevancy, maybe not. There might be some other reasons why some of these games are on the wish list. Like Forsaken Remastered is an example of an old game that has relevancy because other people liked it, and I played it when I was a kid, but I really didn't like it. And frankly, a lot of these early 3D games made me motion sick, and I've come to realize that was the case with Doom in particular. It was Doom 1, Doom 2, the original Dooms. I couldn't actually play any of those games because they made me motion sick. Not sure I really need to play The Sims. But there is definitely some relevancy there. Some games on this wishlist clearly are examples of games that if somebody wants to put their money where their mouth is and gift a game to me, I will cover it, but otherwise it's just sitting at the bottom of the list of the wish list forever. And eventually I guess maybe I would do a wish list cleanup. I don't think I need to do a wishlist cleanup though, as I'm going through this. Not anytime soon. It may be just once a year I'll have to do a wishlist cleanup, which is fine. In fact, it's better that way, because that means the wishlist will just always be of moderate quality of games, and then I just have to look at the fall list every 6 months. Slender the Arrival, probably not a game I'd have much fun with, but I'm debating if it still would have any relevancy now. It's been 6 years since this came out, and Slender Man as a thing has been mostly forgotten, so there's less reason. And we're down to $4.99 games. A lot of games seem to be at $5.99 and $4.99. Everybody's doing very standard pricing, which goes to show that competition in pricing between video games is not really a thing, because the Testament of Sherlock Holmes for $4.99 compared to Duke Nukem Forever for $4.99 does not really mean anything to anybody. These are completely different products. Nobody's going to buy Duke Nukem Forever and say, oh well, it's close enough to the Testament of Sherlock Holmes. They're completely different games, and so yeah, there's really nobody that considers the pricing of their game compared to the pricing of other games. If they did, you would see things that are $98, $97, $4.50. You have something here from 2009, 10 years ago, that's mixed reviewed, Malahari, and then you have very positively received Batman Arkham City Game of the Year edition for $4.99 from 2012, 3 years later. So yeah, there's definitely weird stuff. I want to get this game at $4.99. It's still a little expensive. I want to get this because I already own Please Don't Touch Anything, the not 3D version, and then they remade it as a 3D version, so it doesn't make a lot of sense to play one without comparing it to the other. I'd like to own all of the Dragon's Lair games and Space Ace, but the way this game plays is super difficult, so I don't think I'd probably really play it as much as just watch it play itself, and that's fine for me, but that would leave me to mostly just criticizing the storyline and the elements. There's not a lot to criticize about it. It's kind of a QuickTime event style of game before QuickTime events were a thing. Yeah, you have really old games like Battle Chess, which maybe came to Steam in 2017, but Battle Chess came out on PC in the mid-90s or early 90s. And then you have like the lesser known sequel of Battle Chess 2 Chinese Chess. Hard to justify spending $5 on such old games though. Lego City Undercover for $4.99 is probably a decent price for our bad Lego games. Lego games can be up and down in quality. You have games like this, like The Girl and the Robot for $5 that really never finished and ends on a cliffhanger, so you kind of just have to take it for what it is. You're probably never going to go here. Here's the first game in the Umihari Kawase character series, and you can see this Japanese girl. She's younger in this game. She gets older in each game, which is an odd thing. Most characters don't visibly age in series, but this one they went that route, which is weird. Imagine if Mario from Super Mario Brothers or Donkey Kong aged even 1 year for every year in reality that he's been out. Mario was probably, if you were to guess, a 30-year-old, 40-year-old. In Donkey Kong, one would assume that much, and 30 years later that would mean Mario is like 70 years old, and certainly that would not work in the game series, and that would mean all the other characters are roughly the same age. You have re-releases of games like DuckTales Remastered for $4.99. You have Lust for Darkness, which would be, this is an example of a game that I don't think any amount of censoring whatsoever would make it acceptable to play on Steam. I mean on YouTube. But I still want to support adult games, and so I would have to potentially think of a different way of reviewing this style of game without putting any of the visual content up, which would be weird, certainly. But I would be willing to take on that challenge if someone gifted me that game. Let's see, what else? There's a lot of little games, certainly. In fact, quite a few games here that I don't recognize in first place. I certainly have hit the point where there's so many games on the wish list, so many games in my head, so many games I saw at E3, which happened just a few weeks ago, just a couple of weeks ago, that it's hard to keep every single game in your head. There's a Japanese RPG series, the Yi series, which is a long-running series. I'm not sure it's one you really need to cover, but it's got relevancy in the fact that it is so long-running. Most of these games, though, I do recognize. So here's Ys 1 and 2 Chronicles Plus. This might be the first in the series. I'd have to do some research to figure that out. Let's see. More Nancy Drew games. The Nancy Drew games that are older seem to be going for $4.19. These are point-and-click adventures, and I am a sucker for point-and-click adventures, so I would like to potentially cover the Nancy Drew games. That being said, I think I already own the first couple of them, and I think if I'm remembering right, the first 3 Nancy Drew games were made by a different company in a different style, so I was going to go through those first 3 that are kind of bad. And then this might be the 4th game in the series. Maybe not, but... And then it adapts a different style and is a little bit better as far as what you're going for. Star Control, I believe, just finished their lawsuit with Stardock. So the Star Control series is no longer in legal jeopardy, so you can buy 1, 2, and 3 for $3.99. They're not discounted though, so it would be a real mistake unless you just absolutely wanted a game to buy it when it is not discounted on Steam. Almost every game on Steam at least gets a 1% discount some point around the year, and there is a plugin that sometimes works when you're on a Steam games page that will tell you the historical low price they've seen for games, so you can know whether they are doing a good job or a bad job. It does a bunch of these visual novel psychological horror games for $3.99. This is not a bad price, frankly, for visual novels, because they're not likely to go on discount, and they are a very niche product from Japan, and Japanese games tend to have a higher price points. Niche games also have a tendency to have higher price points, so there's a lot of reasons why you might want to go with that. There's a lot of bits of DLC that you have to also consider when looking at games. Like if you were to buy Carcassonne, is that how you pronounce that? I can never remember. If you were to buy Carcassonne, you probably want the DLC, and $4 for these little bits of these expansions is really expensive. In fact, you'd be better off buying this game in reality and getting the cardboard, and then buying the expansions in reality, and you probably would pay the exact same price. Not all video games need to be digital games, and quite often digital versions of real-world games are made pretty badly, and you're better off playing them in general in the real world. A lot of them don't even have multiplayer support, so it doesn't make a lot of sense. And then you also get back into Tabletop Simulator. You'll probably use some DLC on Tabletop Simulator that will make it pretty easy to play Carcassonne through that, versus buying a individual product. Although sometimes the individual products are done very nicely, and they're graphically better, and they understand the rules of the game better. So there's more of a reason to buy an individual version of the game. I'm not sure I'd really want to own any of the Far Cry games, but at $3.99. The best way to buy games, by the way, is if you are able to buy a bundle of an entire series. If you want to play that series, that's good. If you're able to buy a bundle from that developer or publisher, if you want to own all the developer and publisher games, that's better. But that usually involves investing $200, $300, $400 just off the top to own all of those games. So that's a big ticket whale gamble there, to buy everything from a publisher. If you could buy the Telltale games right now as a publisher bundle, this would be a perfect time to do that, since the Telltale games are losing their licenses and Telltale is out of business. I was able to do that a couple years ago, and that got me almost all the Telltale games except for some of the newer ones. And frankly, at this point, it's not really too worth it to actually try and find the Telltale games I don't have and buy them, because if I criticize the game and say it's good and you should go buy it, right now you can't buy it. So that's not very useful consumer advice. Here's Alone in the Dark 1, 2, and 3, which are very old games that have been ported to PC for $3.74. So if I was going to get these games, maybe I would get the remaster in newer versions using the Alone in the Dark series. Heroes of Magic 3 HD edition for $3.74 is probably a very good price, but I would want to look at these reviews and see why people hate the remastered HD edition of this. What did they do to this old game that was super popular back in its day? I remember spending hours and hours and hours playing this game when it came out originally. But yeah, maybe at that deep discount it's worth it. Maybe there's a problem with it. The Might and Magic Heroes of Might and Magic series was very poorly handled as a series, and allowed to be run into the ground, when frankly it should be a series that would have been an annualized series, or every couple of years you would have gotten a new expansion. Is this a VR game? Golem? I don't keep VR games on my wish list because at this point I severely suspect I'll never actually buy a VR headset. I've yet to see enough games that make sense, even games that are good for VR, which there are a few, all seem to only be 30-minute experiences. And the thing with VR is you may really only be able to play for 30 minutes with a heavy headset on your head until you get tired, or if you're standing up and moving around, you might only be able to play for 30 minutes or an hour before you're exhausted. So video games, which traditionally have been around the idea of spending as much time as you possibly would want, them being limited makes very little sense. I'm not sure I want to play any of the GTA games at this point either. $3.49 for the older games. Things that you historically might want to own, but not things I particularly I'd want to jump on and play as a high priority game. It's not like there's going to be a new GTA anytime soon. Tom Clancy games, I'm not sure which, if any of the Tom Clancy games need to be covered. I imagine Rainbow Six Vegas is probably a very good game to cover, whereas End War is not a game I've ever heard of before, so maybe it's good too. There definitely are some categories of games I've never played before that I'd like to get into. The Prince of Persia remasters are an example of a game series I haven't played, but a action platformer games are things I understand and played a lot before. So all of these games I could get the entire series and the remaster for $3.39. That's not a bad deal to go for. And then I could do a mini series over the course of a year or so playing all these games. But Tom Clancy games, yeah, I am so out of the loop on that I have no idea of the probably 25 or more Tom Clancy games that exist, which ones to play. Here's Fallout New Vegas, but you'd have to be careful to get the Ultimate Edition. So $3.29 for the non-Ultimate Edition would probably be a bad purchase. And you might run into a game like this where the Ultimate Edition is just a different version you can buy, and you can't buy the DLC to turn a regular edition into an Ultimate Edition, so you just would have to buy the game a second time. I don't see a lot of that, but I wouldn't be surprised if it happens every now and then on Steam. Fighting games are another example of a game style that I've just never played fighting games, so I'm going to have to wrap my head around what are the top 10 fighting games that need to be covered, what are the fighting games I would want to cover, does it really matter, is there any reason to actually cover any of them. You can't really, it seems like to me, just jump into Mortal Kombat 11 or Street Fighter 6 and say, well, I've got the game that is the best game and there's no reason to try the other games. There's things like Guilty Gears, many Guilty Gear games that I'm sure should be also considered. There's plenty of other 2D, more anime looking fighting games that should be considered because they control a lot better. And a lot of what fighting games is a game series around how well do the controls and inputs work versus how much advertisement is around them. And Mortal Kombat 11 and Street Fighter are not well received fighting games because they're full of DLC and microtransactions. Psychonauts in the Rhombus of Ruin is $2.99. This is a VR only title. The Psychonauts 2 game is going to be a direct continuation after the events of this. I guess it's not going to matter that much because clearly not that many people are going to play or own this game, so there will almost certainly be a recap. And there is good news, the Psychonauts 2 will almost certainly get finished and published, which was a little questionable before. Double Fine was not in a great position as far as looking like they were able to get the funding to finish Psychonauts 2, but they've been acquired by Microsoft, so now Microsoft can fund them and make sure they finish Psychonauts 2. and then who knows what happens to Double Fine at that point. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the older people, the CEO in particular, leaves the company, and what is Psychonauts becomes a different type of company that does different types of games and has a different style of running a business. We're running through a lot of games that I'm not recognizing again as we're going through the $2.99 games. Yeah, Crypto the Necrodancer for $2.99. I would like to probably purchase this, but I want to make sure that it has some kind of mod or easy mode built in, because if as a rhythm game I'm gonna really stink at it, and that's why I've been afraid to purchase this game so far, is that I really don't know if that's gonna be the experience that I would really want. And you're in a weird position here with Crypto the Necrodancer, because the Cadence of Hyrule, which is kind of the spiritual successor to Crypto the Necrodancer, is a Switch only game that involves Link and Zelda, which are Nintendo characters. So Cadence of Hyrule is almost certainly never coming to PC. So the only hope you could really have is that Crypto the Necrodancer 2 comes out and it takes a lot of the ideas that are in Cadence of Hyrule and makes them even better. Otherwise, you would kind of want to play Crypto the Necrodancer either on PC or maybe it's on Switch, and then play Cadence of Hyrule on Switch, and then play whatever else is made by this company next. So that's kind of a platform jumping issue that happens a lot. I'm not sure you really need to play Disney's Pixar Finding Nemo, even if it is $2.99. I have some kids games here, some Disney games, and I wanted to check them out. Usually they're not very good, and frankly, as the years go by, they become less relevant, so they probably wouldn't get very many views. Castle Crashers, although it came out in 2012, was overwhelmingly positive, as you can see. So $2.99 for Castle Crashers is probably a great deal. I don't think there's any DLC there. Or you have a game like Haiti, which became kind of a YouTube sensation because of the character having a big buttocks. As a robot character, big bust and big buttocks, just because that's what the creator wanted, and good for him for sticking to his preference. Not a game really worth $14.99, $2.99. Sure, worth playing there. It's allegedly an action platformer, Metroidvania puzzle game, so there's I think an actual game in it too, and not just a bunch of cheesecake and nothing else. Let's see, Doom 3. As someone who just played Doom 2016 reboot, it's unlikely I really need to own Doom 3, particularly this version of Doom 3, which is the original version, and not the BFG edition, which does a major remaster and redesign of it. This is something historically I might want to own, but I probably would only spend 30 minutes playing it to spotlight it, and that would be that. It's a footnote style game. Here's the Alone in the Dark reboot in 2013, which is before the... Oops. Well, that might have just ruined my position. So, Alone in the Dark, not well received. Not a game that I'd really want to go through at this point. Let's see. And I would have to find the position over here, so we were at... We were above here, I believe. So I'm, in general, even though there's 5 or 6 listings of Alone in the Dark games, I'm considering the entire series in a nutshell. So here we were. And none of the games are particularly relevant or that good, so it's kind of hard to justify playing all the Alone in the Dark games to just tell people, yeah, it's a bad series, you shouldn't buy it. Particularly when I'm gonna go buy it to make that statement, when I could just say that statement right now. Oregon Trail's Director's Cut for $2.49. If this is the actual original Oregon Trail game, that would be good, but I don't think it really is. I think this is kind of a troll continuation of it. Or here's Another World, a game that's incredibly difficult, but 20th Anniversary Edition, $2.49. It makes a lot of sense to own that game at that price. Not so much sense to spend $10 on it. FTL, a game I own on a different account, so just trying to... There's like 3 or 4 games that I covered very early in my channel that were on a secondary account, and so I'm just trying to keep everything on one account. But that would be the type of game that there's no real reason for me to go back and play it again. It was like the second game I ever covered on my YouTube channel, and I made, I think, probably 100 episodes on it, 100 playthroughs of very long length, and only won about 5 times. FTL in particular has a problem around its win to loss ratio. Here's a whole collection of Sherlock Holmes games, most of them not great. So you can see some that are $2.49 and they're mostly positive, and then you have some that are $2.49 and they're mostly negative. I'm again considering that as a series. Here's Doom 3 again. Did these things move in a different order? They might have. The wishlist may randomize the order in which the games are listed as long as they're the same price. I don't know why it would do that. No database in its right mind would do that unless it was programmed to do that. Quake 1, Quake 2. I should have purchased Quake 1 and Quake 2 and played them as I was doing spotlights on Doom 1 and Doom 2. But I didn't, so I'd be fine owning these games, but I don't think I'd actually be able to play them. I think they'd make me motion sick. Let's see, what else is there? What's the next game that's slightly worth mentioning? Here's an example of an episodic game that you have to buy each episode as DLC, so the price is actually pretty expensive unless you can get it in a bundle. Let's see. Here's an example of a game I tried to cover on YouTube and it got content ID'd and I think blocked. I don't know if I really would want to spend the $2.09 to try and cover this game, which I was saying amazingly positive things about, if knowing that it's just going to get blocked on YouTube because of content ID and music claims. I certainly hadn't dealt with that before, since it was a very early game to run into that problem. Nowadays, with the exception of a few games that have like one episode of the entire playthrough blocked, and some Star Wars games, Star Wars music in particular, anything owned by Universal Music Group, which is pretty much everything as far as popular songs, they get content added. Although, since I'm not in the YouTube partner program, them putting ads on my channel doesn't really affect me much because I'm not capable of doing that myself. So it's not even really a case at this point of Universal Music Group stealing money from me as much as it is YouTube is stealing money from me by kicking me out of the YouTube partner program simply because I didn't have enough subscribers, and then YouTube also made it for years now impossible to get new subscribers. So One way you could certainly support my channel, as I try not to sound too bitter here, is to get friends to subscribe to my channel. They don't need to click the notification bell. They don't need to watch any video whatsoever ever again. Just subscribe to it and help get me over 1,000. Pyramid scheme that and have your friends tell their friends to subscribe to my YouTube channel. It'd be very much appreciated. And when I get back, if I ever got back into the partner program, I can make a slight promise that I'm going to try really hard not to be obnoxious with the ads. Particularly lately on YouTube, people have gotten very, very obnoxious about putting ads every 10 minutes, putting those double ads. If there's any way I can opt out of double ads for people, I'm going to opt out for that, because that is awful. As someone who watches YouTube, it is just a nightmare experience to get an ad you've seen a million times before playing, and then another ad playing that you've seen a million times before. We've got some arcade games here, like Galaga, Miss Pac-Man, Dig Dug. For $2, you're still paying a pretty high price for these games, considering how old they are, but you're probably not going to get any better deal. This is the arcade game series versions of these. I imagine there are several other packages and re-releases of these games on Steam. This is one of the few soundtracks on my YouTube, on my wish list. I don't think I'd ever actually buy this for myself, but I did enjoy the music from the Cat Lady horror game, so that's something that if somebody wanted to gift me a soundtrack, that would probably be your only option. Most of the time, I have no appreciation for music, and video game music is very different from regular music because it's designed to be repetitive, repeatable, and forgettable. So it plays in the background over and over again, and people are not annoyed by that or irritated by hearing the same loop over and over again. There are definitely examples of it not being that case, and there being some major songs that are really, really impactful in games, but they're much fewer and far between. We're at the $1.99 price point for games, and yeah, I'm seeing games here that I'd like to cover, and at $1.99 it makes sense to purchase them. Like Judge Dredd, Dread vs. Death is a 2009 game. I'd pay $2 for that, sure. Though it really comes down to, do I need a bunch of lesser known games that would be kind of at the bottom of the barrel choices, or am I looking for more bigger, more impactful AAA games? I think I'm kind of still looking for more bigger AAA impactful games. Here's DLC for that game Fury for $1.79, so it's important, I guess, to know that. I have not been particularly good about putting DLC for games on my wish list, so there are probably some games I own right now that have some bits of DLC I'd like to find, and there's no great way to really search that. Or there are some games that are definitely on this wish list that have bits of DLC that I'd like to also own before even starting to play the game. The problem with DLC is that very often you do need it at the very beginning. The Room 3 for $1.94, $1.49 if I can read right. I've played Room 1 and 2. They're not majorly impressive games. They're just kind of Unity cell phone puzzle games, mechanical puzzle box games. But at $1.49, that price is right in line with it, so I probably would buy that. Here's the first game in the Higurashi When They Cry HAL series, Chapter 1 for $1.49. I believe the Higurashi When They Cry series is somebody gets murdered and somebody disappears, and you have to investigate something around that. And every chapter is another year in which somebody gets murdered and somebody disappears. It's like a curse on the city that happens, which I think there's a lot more story than that simplistic explanation to make that more of a interesting sell, but I really don't have time to do it justice now. Let's see. Chips Challenge 2 for $1.24. It's really hard, as curated as my wish list is, to say any of these games at $1.24 are bad. And certainly a lot of these games are things that people could gift to me easily. That's not asking a lot to support a YouTube person, is to spend $1.24. Alien vs Predator Classic 2000. So not everything is a $60 game, or even a $40 game, or even a $10 game. There's a lot of options here to meet a lot of people's different prices. I tried to do the same on my Patreon. I haven't really done anything with my Patreon, but I made several tiers if people wanted to support me with just $1 a month, or $2 a month, or $5 a month. That would be super helpful too. Really just as a moral boost. It's like, I'm not looking to make real money. I'm just looking to have a bit of a moral boost and a bit of appreciation. It would be nice if I had a Patreon that paid me a living wage. That's all I'm really looking for. I'm not looking for major, like $10,000 a month or something like that. That would be nice, certainly, but it wouldn't really change too much as far as how I do my YouTube channel. The main thing is, if I started making over a living wage, is I would just hire an animator and an editor to make thumbnails, and I would hire people and give them jobs, and potentially spread the wealth around as much as possible. There's a bunch of Lord of Shadows 2 DLC that I covered Lord of Shadows 2, so really this would just be a completionist urge to spend $3 on this stuff, and it's not even discounted, so it doesn't make a lot of sense to buy that. Lord of Shadows 2, not particularly a great game. The Castlevania Lord of Shadows series, not really that good, and now that we have Bloodstained Ritual of the Night out on PC, you're much better off playing that and considering it. Here's a game that was the #1 bestseller on Steam last year, discounted 60% to 79 cents, and with it being an anime girl in bondage rope ties, you can probably see why it sold so well. It's just a very intriguing thumbnail. It really claims to just be a match 3 puzzle game otherwise, and it doesn't even, I think, have too much nudity in it. It definitely has some sexual content in it, or context in it, but it's always interesting to point out that was the #1 selling game on Steam last year. It beat everything else out. Every AAA game, every major publisher game that had tons of advertisement around it, the cheap game that had a anime shrine maiden tied up in bondage. So if anybody tries to tell you sex does not sell, it totally sells. And being cheap sells too. A Ruby deck building game, I'm not sure I really need to play that at this point. I'm not sure I need to play any of the Ruby series. And at some point here, we ran into games that are free. We just very quickly went into 49-cent games. 49 cents, I believe, is the lowest price that anything can be. Chips Challenge 1 at 49 cents is a good deal. Some of these cheaper games, maybe not really even worth the 49 cents. After 49 cents games, you start running into games that are free to play, and you have to be kind of careful about the free to play games to see if they have any microtransactions in them or in-app purchases in them. Friday the 13th Killer Puzzle, for instance, is a free to play for like the first puzzle, and then you have to buy all the other. So there's ways to make it look like it's free to play, and it really isn't. So there's some shenanigans with all of that. And I don't put a ton of free to play games on my wish list, although there are quite a few here. Some of these may have gone to free to play before. And then here you have one that says it's $17.99, but it has some kind of demo or something that is putting it in with the free to play games. Again, so the sorting of things can often be wrong. The only other way to search when doing this, and this is really what you would want for your own Steam wishlist, is to search by discount after you search by price. And that would allow you to potentially go, well, this has a 90% off, it's at 49 cents as a discount. This is as cheap as this game, Captain Morgan and the Golden Turtle, will ever get. This is a point-and-click adventure game, but it's only 60% positive, so I kind of really need to look at this game and see if it needs to be on the wish list alone. And you can certainly scroll this way, and that's what I'll be doing off screen when I start doing my actual shopping, is considering what is discounted the most. You'll see there are some things that are 90% off, but because of their high base price, there's $1.99. You might even run into some 90% off. Here you go. South Park, The Fractured But Whole, is a base price of $60, 90% off, $5.99. I think there's some DLC, like one bit of DLC on this, and I don't know if it's really relevant or YouTube friendly now to play any South Park games. So I would be fine in owning it, but I'd almost certainly never play it. So that one is actually kind of a questionable. I would be better off playing a Japanese RPG with a bunch of anime characters in scantily clad clothing than I would be playing South Park. And this is the sequel to South Park: The Stick of Truth. Although, when both of these games came out, they were pretty well received. Maybe not so much anymore. And then, yeah, you'll get into 85% discounts, and then it seems like you jump from 85 down to 75, back up to 83% in my case, down to 80%. You don't see a lot of discounts here of 94%, 93%, 92%. These numbers clearly are just picked out of the air. They're not numbers that that are considered or in any way against competition of anything else. And that would be certainly interesting if Valve in its backend allowed you to price your game versus a competitor's game. So if a competitor put their game as 50% off, you always set it as 49% or 51% off. Clearly my wish list compared to what the featured games are going to be different, but there are things that overlap. I do want Devil May Cry, I do want Assassin's Creed Odyssey. This, however, would be a high price tag for either one of these games, because these are AAA games that recently came out. Pretty much everything on this featured list is something I'd like to own, but they are also pretty expensive games that are just discounted at 50%. And there will be probably a sale in November, and probably a sale in December, and probably even a sale in October. So if you can wait 6 more months, you get another chance that these games might be a little bit more discounted. Although Prey, being owned by ZeniMax and Bethesda, might not be that discounted. Then they're trying to sell some music games. I have really not a lot of rhythm, so most of these music games I don't think I could play, but I'd consider trying. But I just embarrass myself more than not. Seems like they're sorting it down to different tags and categorizations. to make it a little bit more. But this sale doesn't look like there's a major issue happening here. Interesting. Apparently I already own some of the other Witcher games. Yeah, these are the first Witcher 1 and 2. I don't own the DLC or the Witcher 3. I could probably buy this Star Wars franchise complete collection again since I own most of it and get a very high discount on that. And here you've got a category where you could search just above 75% if you don't have a wish list of your own or don't know what to look for, or you could search under $10 and you can find quite a few things here. And clearly you see people price their games at $9.99, so they're at the under $10 list. It seems like the main takeaway to take from this is you should probably, if I'm understanding things right on this, sorry, that's my tab suspender, the Steam Grand Prix element here is, my guess is to take the, well, I don't know why the tortoise is number 2, but I guess my guess is pick the tortoise, and then you'll have less of a chance of getting first place, but you'll still have higher chance of getting random games. And then purchase all the games you want to purchase today, day 1. And then if you want to get more points and support this, so that you could purchase the badge, which is really, these are the 2 things you should be able to purchase, and I don't think there's any other rewards they're going to unlock. And these keeps going back to sleep. Let's see. There's nothing over here on the side. The main thing is these quests. They want you to play games. And they had the Steam Spring Cleaning Sale before, and that was a big point, I think, where they've started adopting this new mentality of trying to get people to actually play the games they buy instead of just buying more games, which is probably a good idea because Valve could use more satisfaction with their service. The one thing I guess that didn't happen here, if I was to look, let's see, if I was to look at my games here, this is not the way to do this. You would need the application open. The Steam library in the application is supposed to get updated, but I don't get a feeling that happened, so that was slightly delayed. And speaking of delayed, here we can just look at a list of all the games I have. So all games, total size is 3.30 gigabytes. I don't think that's accurate at all. I think they might mean 3.30 terabytes or higher, and 39,155 hours on playtime. That's not right. That is not right at all. Borderlands 2 is 3.3 gigabytes, and I have that installed. So it might be telling me the games I just have installed instead of all the games in general. But yeah, if I was on the launcher application, I'm fairly certain that hasn't been improved. That'll be the next big update, and Steam does seem like it is taking a attitude around trying to have more people play their games. And as far as the finality, the last thing I would want done on my Steam account is there's 2,615 games on the wish list. I'd like to own all of them. are in reasonableness. Maybe I would only get 1,300 of them, half. If that's the case, that would double the amount of games I own. That probably is close to a lifetime supply, although through things like Patreon and more gifts from fans, I would like to cover new games quicker. Patreon certainly would help with that if I just had cash on hand always to buy a game day one and not really have to worry about discounts and shopping. Well, we've been going 2 hours. That's the Steam Grand Prix Summer Sale. Your experience will vary a little bit in what's recommended to you. There looks like there are some pretty good discounts. You can probably rest assured that there won't be any good discounts until at least October otherwise, so you've got a few months. The Steam Prime Day, not the Steam, but the Amazon Prime Day sale is allegedly happening in a couple of weeks. Doubt you'll get very many video game sales on there if you're trying to balance out sales, but that's something, I guess, to keep in the back of your head. Although I would say Amazon Prime Day in the past 2 years has been a really bad amount of offerings and sales, with very little that was worth purchasing. But yeah, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I again will ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos because it helps me with YouTube, tells them that my videos are worth watching. When you subscribe, click the notification bell, then click the pull down on the notification bell so that you can tell them you actually want all notifications. And frankly, you basically need to follow me on some of the social media sites down below in the description box, also as a backup place for notifications. Also, down below is a link to my Patreon where you can support me monthly, or where you can friend me on Steam and gift me games off my wish list, or gift me gift cards if you don't want to pick. That is also very helpful. If you gift a gift card, then I would just have currency. I have 7 cents from selling like a trading card or something. Yeah, it doesn't seem like you get anything for making badges this sale, and that'll probably save me quite a bit of money. Yeah, and yeah, we're done. So thank you for watching. Have a good evening.